Our first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil rock.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Riff Worship Podcast. It's me, the Dillbozer, Baldini, the most ignorant human being from the state of Arkansas. Jersey South is where I'm from. And join with me, as always, is Sugar Grove's own King of the Ring. How are you doing? Mean Paulson Austin, how are you doing?
I'm mean as hell. I'm so mean. No, I'm the meanest one on this podcast.
All right, enough of your shit. And back as always is the oldest man on the fucking planet, Justin Swindle. Sir, how are you doing? How are your knees? How is your lower back? You just lost a close friend today. How is that?
Yeah, I remember watching Bob Newhart when I was a young adult. You know, he was still coming up in the world, just a child. I was in my mid-40s. It's tough to see a young man go, you know.
God damn.
But
starting this one off strong, guys.
Austin's quote was that scene from The Network, the movie The Network, right? I'm mean as hell, and I'm not gonna take it anymore.
That's it. I'm pretty steamed about this, and I ain't gonna be quiet about it neither.
I've never seen that because I am a Philistine.
Edgy people did. You don't have to.
What? I grew up watching slapstick comedies, guys. I don't know what we're talking about. My girlfriend and I watched Serial Mom together recently.
What's that? Serial Mom?
It's a John Waters film.
Oh,
Kathleen Turner plays like a suburban housewife that just like murks people, and it's great.
Damn. Shit.
Mercs. Damn. Taking us back to the mid-2000s with that lingo, Dylan.
Speaking of mid-2000s.
We got there somehow. Damn, we sure did it.
The record that we're talking about today. Recently we discussed an Atlanta album, or I should say, we recently discussed another Georgia record, another Georgia band. And that album had to do with a lot of streams and catfishing. We're setting sails to the deep seas on this one, bud.
Did you go to media class in the
Absolutely
last week,
not.
Dylan? How have you been working on these transitions?
I have been in a small town. When I left that town, the population was 654. When I went back this weekend, it was 500.
God. What happened to those 150 people?
I'm one of them, so we're going deep sea fishing on this one, boys. We're also taking a book with us, a really long book that has to do with a whale of some sort. What are we talking about today? What are we talking about? Mastodon's second relapse release, 2004's magnum opus Leviathan.
Has any one of us here actually read Moby Dick?
No.
Nope.
Hell no.
I'll probably do a book on tape or something at this point, like an audio book. But I bought the book because I loved this album, and it is still sitting on my shelf.
It's like a lot of like an allegory for God. Yeah, I'm fine. They did the work for me. I like this a lot. I could probably guess that I like this album a lot better than that book. I'm just going to assume.
I mean, knowing that you've got a 36-hour flight ahead of you and going like, shit. Well, it's either this or an old copy of Newsweek I could buy for $38 at an airport. I'd probably go with this too.
Oh man, Eddie Van Halen's on the cover of Guitar World. I'll pay $20 for that one.
Yeah,
I'll pay airport prices for that.
I bought Rex Brown's book at an airport bookstore when it came out. I only paid like $17 for it. Like it was cheap. It was on sale.
I once forgot a charger at home before a flight and had to buy I think I bought a portable battery for like $100.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Right.
So when I went to Ireland, something happened to my headphones in between one flight and another one. and they just stopped working. Something fell off of them. And my dad is like, I have a pair of headphones, and it's a pair of earbuds that came with a camera he bought like years before. And they're not like earbuds. They were headphones. They would just sit on the outside of your ear. And it's like, this isn't how it works. So like I had to sneak off because my old man was a bastard to buy like headphones. And I went,
Wow.
yeah, I know. Like all of us are speaking. Yeah. So I had to go buy a pair of headphones, and he fucking caught me. He's like, of course you would. He's like, you had a perfectly good pair of headphones you could have used.
Perfectly
like, all right,
good.
I'm not doing this, old man. I'm grabbing a beer and I'm going to go sit in the fucking flight. Anyway, this
Hey.
record.
Yeah. At least one good thing came out of buying something from the, Hudson newsstand or whatever at the airport.
You get a classic record. You get literally a classic record. This album is 20 years old this year. It was released on the same day as Lamb of God's Ashes of the Wake, which was August 31st, 2004. If you're familiar with this podcast, I believe one of the very first things that we recorded together was it episode 2?
It was episode 2. We talked about March of the Fire Ants for our second episode, along with Emerald. This was like before we were not even a video podcast. This was like like a run of like 6 episodes we did. But yeah, in our very second episode, we talked about Mastodon. So now for episode 67, I think this will be, we finally made it to a full length record.
Yep. It was a toss up this year for 2 records from this band. It was this album turning 20, and then you've got Crack the Sky turning 15. And I had to go with this one because this was the first full album from the band that I owned or had listened to it in entirety of. I'd seen the video for March of the Fire Ants. I don't think I owned a copy of Remission till after this record because I could find this one. I couldn't find that one. And I know I'm extremely familiar with this record, and I know Swindle is too. But how many times have you listened to this record, or is this the very first time?
I'd listened to this record before, but I will say I didn't grow up listening to this record.
Right.
And people listen to this along with a lot of these other like 2004 episodes. I think
You were
probably think I'm like a fucking poser. But Dylan, like I was in high school when this band like was still like Crack the Sky came out in like 2009, right?
Correct.
I was in high school for that. So, I mean, like, they were putting out records. Like, all of these bands were, like, still very prominent. And I could have easily gone back and checked them out. But I was just, like, so fixated on, like, the older stuff. I didn't get into this, like, till, like, way later. And even really, I know I don't have the same attachment to this as you guys have, like, because I assume, like, when you heard this is, like, fucking life-changing type of record.
Yep.
We all have
Absolutely.
like records within our musical journey where you're like, I can remember when I heard like the Ramones for the first time or whatever, that record or whatever. And it just kind of dictated everything that you listened to after it.
Mm-hmm.
So I respect it for that because I know there's a lot of people out there probably listening to this who feel the same way about this record. But I just didn't get into this band until way, way later.
I really like the first Ramones album.
Yeah. I like the earlier stuff is probably the best stuff. Yeah.
For a band like them.
We'll just keep that joke going forever.
Yeah, I mean that it needs to stay. It's I could definitely see how the first record sounds completely different than the last record, and it's a wild fucking thing, man. It's wild. It's hard to like compare a Blitzkrieg Bop to a Pet Cemetery. It's just so widely different.
When they changed from 3 chords to 4 chords every song, that's when they lost me.
Hey,
they
when they started
proggy.
alternate picking, it was a big deal. It's a big fucking deal. But unlike the Ramones, whose albums all sound like the Ramones, this band's kind of trajectory, that being Mastodon, is each of their first 4 records sound vastly different. It sounds like a progression. And I would even compare their first 4 records to another band whose name starts with an M to their first 4 records. I would hold the first four I would hold Mastodon's first four records up to the first four Metallica records 100%. I think there's a lot of similarities, but they don't sound completely similar. There's hugely different influences, but there's also similar influences there. I mean, Thin Lizzy being one of them. And it's hard not to see some of the Metallica influences on maybe some of these earlier Mastodon records. I'd even say through maybe Remission through Blood Mountain, you really get a lot more of that. But this record in particular is a massive lumbering jump in, just a jump from the first record. Remission is a very straightforward, aggressive, right out the gate. There's really, it's all gas, no brakes on that one. But you get a couple little flourishes of what's to come. Whereas this definitely feels like a band that's gotten a little bit more refined. And, out of that, to become that refined, it takes a lot of playing. And these guys played a lot. I mean, from the time Remission released, I don't think they stopped touring. I think there's a quote from Brent Hines that states the only way he could tell when Remission started and when the Leviathan stuff started was he had long hair when Remission started. And I mean, touring that much, playing that much, playing as often as they did, taking every tour that came along, and just, builds a lot of playability, right? Builds a lot of skill, a lot of stamina into creating and writing and recording different things. But let's dig a little bit deeper into this band and where they started. So Mastodon technically started as a band in the year 2000. Each of the members have played in different projects throughout the years. We could easily say that Bill Kelleher and Bron Daler, who originally were in bands in Rochester, New York, such as Lethargy, like a technical kind of death metal project. They were also in another band, Today Is the Day, where they did touring with, where they were the touring musicians of that band. Today Is the Day is kind of Steve Austin's, kind of his project, his baby. So a lot of the guys, insert glass breaking. So a lot of the guys that had played in that band have kind of been backing guys. But on one of the tours that Bron and Bill did with Today Is the Day, they toured with Neurosis, which has a huge presence in the band Mastodon.
Crazy. I'm sure they won't come back up on this record at all.
Never again. Never again. Never to return again. This is the only time. But then you've got Bill and Troy, who were in a local Atlanta, kind of Georgia area band called 4 Hour Fogger, that they had played together in for like 7 to 8 years. And sorry,
oh no, yeah, you killed it. You killed it.
What just happened?
Conan O'Brien and Dylan's.
There's like a joke from like Late Night with Conan O'Brien where he's like, in the year 2000. And you fucking said that?
I get it. Now it's just a big fucking joke, isn't it? Anyway, Brent and Troy were in a band. A lot of fucking B's in this band. This is terrible. Brent and Troy started in a band, kind of a local Atlanta band called 4 Hour Fogger. That I don't really have a reference point of what this band sounded like. It just sounded like a lot of really intense and strange influences. I'm sure there were some early 90s influences to that. It almost feels like a Butthole Surfers kind of situation to me when I heard it. Especially some of the live clips from the Workhorse Chronicles that we all kind of partook in.
Yeah, I got to watch that for the first time before this, and it's there's some grimy these are they're fun, they're having a good time. I would say Butthole Surfers for sure. It's like very abrasive sounding.
Yeah.
They like to wear bikinis, sometimes nothing at all. Brent loves getting naked, loves getting just dropping trowel and just letting it all hang out. And
letting it all hang out, man.
Apparently even getting arrested at one point during a show, perhaps. But interesting kind of like connections with the scenes. And, they're in like some other bands that we found as well.
Yeah, other bands such as Fiend Without a Face, which has, again, been able to put out records due to the fact of Mastodon's kind of, legacy. But that Fiend Without a Face band was an interesting thing. A friend of mine named Will and I, when we watched the Workhorse Chronicles DVD, we were like, we got to have this. We got to find it somehow. And we found some like no-name record label that pressed these CDs unbeknownst to Brent, and like was charging $20 a pop for a CD. And we both got it. And I think I still have it, but it's like a quick 27-minute long surfabilly, psychobilly kind of thing with him singing.
They're wearing like,
I mean, it's
fezzes and pantyhose over their face.
Pantyhose, yeah. Stand-up bass, the whole nine. And the Social Infestation band that Troy played bass and did vocals in, put out a release, I guess, kind of late 2000s. And one of the out-of-state shows I did with the Black Shades, I picked that up at Shake It Records in Cincinnati.
Good old Shake It Records.
So I've got it here somewhere. But yeah, the guys all ended up somehow in Atlanta at the same time. Bill and Braun moved down to Atlanta just to get a different pace of things, just to play with different people after leaving Today Is the Day. And obviously Brent and Troy were already there. And lo and behold, what show did they meet at? What band?
Well, I think Brent had met them a few days prior, but they ultimately all congregated at a High on Fire show at a basement, because it was a 4-hour Fogger. Like their last show, I think, was opening for High on Fire at this basement show. And they all kind of like discovered that they really do have like a lot in common as far as like their musical tastes or whatever. But yeah, from what I understand, like Brent had found their number. They were like, Bill and Braun were like trying to jam with some other people. Brent finds their phone number somehow and like goes to jam with them, and he's like fucking trashed. He's like, who is this guy? Like he's terrible. And he's like, I think Bill had seen him perform in one of the other projects before. It was like, no, he's really great when he's sober. We'll have to, and then he comes back the night after, and it worked out great. And he like just riffed through a bunch of songs. But yeah, I think really where it all comes together, a lot of people recognize that High on Fire show being kind of like the inception of, Mastodon.
You essentially form at a High on Fire show. So between Neurosis and High on Fire, you've already got a couple bands that are like, oh, there's a weird tie-in with our career already. But yeah, the guys started jamming, and Mastodon was originally a 5-piece band. They had their friend or buddy, Eric Sainer, join in. And I don't have much information on Eric. I know he's on some of the live footage I've seen throughout the years on a couple tracks. But basically, he was with the band for a period of time, and then he wasn't really feeling it, and he left the band. He left the band, I think, the night or a couple days before a self-booked tour to Canada and back. I think Troy used a copy of a magazine called Book Your Own Fucking Tour or Book Your Own Fucking Life, something like that. And it was all, just collect calls or whatever to get these tours booked. And they were just like, all right, I guess we step up and do vocals somehow and figure this shit out. And they hopped in that gross fucking van that they had at that time and just fucking did it.
I'd say that's a pretty good time to drop out of a band is right before they go on like a 2 or 3 week tour or something.
100%. Yeah, just fuck them.
He probably forgot to ask off work and was just like, well, this is
he fully got out of town. Like he was like,
went back to New York.
Yeah, he just was like not feeling Atlanta, was just like, I'm gonna go back to Rochester. Like, hey, all right, I guess just wasn't feeling it. But for everything that's said about that, I mean, the band has maintained this core lineup, these 4 guys, which is pretty crazy considering, every band that we probably talked about on this show in the past. Just the 4 guys who have maintained and collaborated together all of these years. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and not even just in music, it's in life. It's not especially easy to maintain a relationship that close with 3 other people for 20, 25, 26 years or whatever, quarter century.
especially like considering how much they fucking toured, as Dylan mentioned earlier. I mean, like literally, like I'm sure we'll get into it on Remission. I mean, they were like on the road for like damn near 2 years. It seemed like, you know,
if I were around y'all every day for 2 years, I'd fucking lose it. We would not be doing the show anymore.
Oh, fuck.
You know, with being a band for 20 plus years, whatever it may be. So, being around each other that long, differing personalities in that way, all basically living in the same city, for this time period, and being in a van, because it's not like this band like hit it big immediately. It was, all right, here's the Astro van. Oh, we stepped up into an Econo line, or we stepped up into the next level with the Econo line. You know, it was usually 4 dudes, probably plus one guy helping out, maybe. And matter of fact, I think one of Troy's brothers was their tech for quite some time. He may still be their tech. But doing those early tours where I think there's a great Brent line of, you got to make sure you're surrounded by the right people, because you're going to be eating mustard sandwiches for a while. Like, you're going to be just eating whatever you have. It's white bread and mustard, you know, sleeping on floors, you know, playing shitty venues, whatever it may be. You got to make sure you're in the trenches with the right people. However, all 4 of the guys came from different areas they'd probably done these really small tours or regional touring, or heck, global touring with Today Is the Day. So they all had the hard lessons of being around people they didn't necessarily want to be around or didn't mesh with. So I'm sure going into it, it took being able to find the right people. And all 4 of these guys seem to be the right people, because here we are, it's 2024, and these guys are on a 20th anniversary tour for this record.
Yeah. I mean, also too, like, you also really have to be kind of stoked on what you're actually writing. And it seemed like that happened pretty quickly. Like, the songwriting process, like almost immediately, it seemed like they were able to kind of generate a big kind of catalog of music together. So, yeah, if you're going to be roughing it, which they definitely did for, you know, the better part of, you know, 5 years, let's say.
Yep.
You better be pretty excited about what you're doing. So, yeah. And like I said, things seem to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, the band formed in 2000, probably did their first tour after the first couple practices, wrote 9 or 10 songs, put them out on a couple various releases that were compiled into a Relapse release called Call the Mastodon. I think the first 2 EPs were Slick Leg and Life's Blood.
Yep.
So, yeah, there's a compilation called Call the Mastodon that Relapse put out that has all of that stuff on it. But putting all that stuff out, touring off of those couple of EPs, and then a year after that, you're signed to Relapse Records and you're working on your first full length. Your first full length comes 2 years after the band forms. And it sounds like a band that had been playing together for decades at this point. But the collective experience they'd all had under their belts from playing in different acts and touring and recording in different ways, and also playing the amount of shows that they did between their forming and that record alone, helped bring them together for that record. In a rather chaotic recording situation for the Remission album. I mean, these guys were driven for sure.
And I will say, this is kind of when you were mentioning, you know, the correlations between Mastodon and Metallica. I definitely feel like Remission, you know, kind of going back and listening to this and just kind of getting a feel for, you know, both records. I definitely think you could compare this to Kill 'Em All in a lot of ways. It's just how chaotic it is. And, you know, I obviously, like, just some of the background on the actual recording sessions, it certainly shines through in some of the songs on the record, just the way it sounds and the way it's played. But it is certainly more straightforward than Leviathan. There's like definitely some room for kind of like some breathing room a little bit on some of the songs, but for the most part, it's just like kind of full steam ahead right in your face.
It was definitely an intense record. Even comparing it to this album, this is a little bit more grandiose in scale, a little bit more, maybe a little bit more thought out, whereas that is like shooting straight from the hip. I mean, it opens up with Crusher Destroyer. That's got that great Jurassic Park sound clip at the beginning of it. But Remission, great record. They toured a lot off of it. I think Relapse didn't really know what they had at the get-go because they were on a lot of tours with like death metal bands and doing all these really odd tours, but they also took every single thing that was thrown at them at this point. I mean, they were road dogs. They were living in that fucking van. I would say they were probably touring 8 to 10 months out of the year during this period and then just riding when they were home. They were also working during the recording. They were working 9 to 5 jobs. Some guys were even working like construction.
Yeah, it seemed like Brent was like work from like 7 a.m. to the evening, and then you might be able to go home and shower and then try to lay down some recording. And they had their producer Matt Bayless, Matt Bayless, who was maybe established at this point. I'm not really familiar with his work other than what I've read of. He worked with like ISIS and I believe Botch and bands of that ilk. But you have this guy who's coming in from Seattle who is, I think, was staying with Bill on like an air mattress on the floor. Everybody's got their 9 to 5 jobs. So they're all tired from a day's work and then basically spending, all night into the wee hours of the morning recording. And right out of the gate, there's problems. Matt gets right off the plane and is notified from the studio that they're going to record at that the tape recorder is essentially broken. And he comes in on a Saturday. The part can't be sent off until Monday, and they're not going to get it back until Wednesday. So you're already fucked. You lose a few days. I think they have to maybe change studios a few times. So it's just like you never get comfortable in one place. Everybody's just like fucking zonked, but they're making it work. They're young, they're hungry, they're ready to go. But yeah, like I think the whole process took 10 days and it sounds like a fucking nightmare, honestly.
That is that would test any like experienced band as well. Think of this. How many stories have you read where a band is putting out their 3rd record, their 4th record, and there's this chaotic period where, oh God, something happened with the studio. They'll scrap the fucking record and just go, hey, we just started all over again. I can think of many bands that have gone through something like that. I mean, you look at, speaking of like Metallica, we talked about Injustice for All and the train wreck of a recording session that was for that album and the production. And these guys were just, hey, we want to make sure this thing sounds good. Like, fuck it. We'll just roll with the punches. Let's get it done. Let's put out this shit. And in listening to the record, you can hear some of the intensity behind going through all those frustrations. There's definitely melodic flourishes on the record, but the vocals are just as aggro as they could possibly be. There's no letting up with that. I mean, your melodic passages are more your guitar stuff on there. That's where the melody comes in. But great record. 2002, great debut release from a band, and then they toured their asses off for the next 2.5 years.
They were doing shows with Clutch, The Hidden Hand, Death Metal Legends, Cephalic Carnage, Dillinger Escape Plan. So they were just like out for, like I said, like almost 2 fucking years before they had a moment to breathe and maybe work on some new material.
When they did get the time off, they had the material. It kind of all fell together pretty quickly for Leviathan, but there's a lot of story around Leviathan, right? We made jokes about it at the beginning of this and a little off air about how Braun felt the need to get married during all this time. Took a honeymoon to Hawaii, I believe, or either the wedding or the honeymoon was in Hawaii.
I think it's probably both.
And he had to fly out after the wedding to meet up with the guys in the UK. And he had either 24 hours or 36 hours worth of flights. And he basically grabbed a copy of Herman Melville's Moby Dick. He remembered reading it in high school, didn't really stick with him, but he's like, oh, okay. There's some themes in here that could work. So let's see. And I guess when he arrived to the UK, to meet up with the guys, he's like, I have like bleary-eyed, punchy, probably a little hammered, just like, we're the van's the White Whale, like it's the White Whale. And they're all just like, the rest of the guys are like, hey man, have a drink, relax, we got you, we feel you, man, like it's cool, shit happens. And he kept going on, and they all just drank and talked about it and went, okay, this is gonna work. And again, they're on tour. They were on tour talking about this. So the foundation of the record was kind of set of what the lyrical approach was going to be, and then the music comes, right? A lot of writing. Braun writes a lot. Bill writes a lot. Brent writes a lot. Troy writes a lot. They're all writing. This is a collaborative effort for this band. It's 4 dudes that are very democratic about how they write. And it's very evident on all the records. You can loosely start to hear who, what, when, and where, like where the stuff is coming from. But I'm kind of bouncing around with the structure and the writing of this record. But going back to the Clutch tour that you mentioned, I think when they did the tour with Clutch, they basically had the album written, and they were playing the album live to everybody getting ready to go into the studio after that tour.
Yeah, I mean, basically, from what I understand, the last stop of the tour was either near or in Seattle, where Matt was. So they had it pretty much all done. And yeah, I mean, not pre-internet, but like pre-internet as we know it now, this could never be fucking done. You just play new songs with kind of like half-finished lyrics. You're just kind of like yelling shit over or whatever. And you're playing some of these songs and tinkering with it, and like really, this is just kind of like classic rock and roll shit, like working the album out live and seeing what works, what doesn't work. And then by the end of the tour, you arrive in Seattle, where you basically spend a month of your time living there in an apartment together and recording the record. Now, essentially, with a producer who has a studio that he is comfortable with. You've worked the fuck out of the album, so you're prepared as shit to go in there and ready to lay shit down. So I would say you're pretty well set up from where you were before, that whole situation.
What I thought was funny about, because they've obviously recorded with Matt on 3 separate occasions, Remission, Leviathan, and then the Blood Mountain sessions. But there's a quote from Matt basically saying, like, hey, I know you guys just got off tour with this. Hey, don't ever do that again. Like, get some rest before you come in, man. And they're just like, fuck it. We're good. We're not having burnout. Nothing. We're just moving forward. And the studios that they picked, I believe one is or was owned by Stone Gossard of Pearl Jam fame. And one of them is a studio that did some of the final Nirvana recordings.
Robert Lang Studios. Yeah, the drums were recorded there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've already got, it's kind of a different vibe, right? The first record's chaotic, going from studio to studio, recorded to 2-inch fucking tape as well. I forgot to mention that. Your tape machine breaks. You have to wait days to get the part. You're working construction. Now you're sequestered off in the Northeast. You're sequestered off in the Northwest. And this is your job. This is all you're doing. You're just going in to record. There's no day job you have to worry about. You are living in kind of the Seattle area for a month to 6 weeks, whatever it is. And you get to eat, breathe, and sleep it.
I feel like even though they weren't surrounded by chaos, the guys in Mastodon did probably a good enough job of bringing the chaos to the recording session. They probably didn't need the chaos around it.
Yeah.
They were young. There were things happening, I'm sure. One of my favorite Mastodon stories is, I believe they did mushrooms with Dave Grohl and watched the Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie together.
Man, again, that won't come back at all. Aqua Teen, never heard of him.
Dave was like, I must be fucked up because I'm hearing your voice in this movie.
Don't talk, watch. You came here, watch it.
Beautiful.
Again, let's dig into this album a little bit. Let's dig into the track listing on this a little bit. Austin, why don't you start us out with the opening track?
Little ditty. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. Blood and Thunder. This is it's the signature song. Like, this is, and which is funny. It's the 3rd single for the album, I learned. They initially wanted to have it as the lead, but Relapse was like, hold on, this is like, they saw it as a drastically different approach to what had come before it. So they were like, people aren't going to be prepared for your whole thing here. Let's release it later. So they kind of held off on it. But this is the song that I guess kind of originally appeared on that one of those like promos with like Dillinger, which I was like looking through Metallum and I'm like, oh, they've done like a lot of splits with different bands at like Avenged Sevenfold and Dillinger. I'm like, oh no, they just like slapped together a bunch of these like label promos with a bunch of different bands. Like, hey, they're going on tour or whatever. Like, just bring that. So, yeah, I mean, this is pretty much, one of the band's like quintessential songs. One of the things that you'll definitely hear from out of the gate is just an all-time fucking riff. Like, from the riff, the drum fill, like, it's just classic. There's just nothing that beats it. Like, what a way to open up a record.
Yeah. And the first vocal line of the whole record is, I think that someone's trying to kill me.
Yeah.
What a fucking way to open up an album. Weirdly.
100%.
I mean, it's a hell of an album opener. It's a hell of an album closer. It's a set ending track for them. As you said, Austin, it is the band's signature song. It would be hard to debate what else could be their signature song. I mean, there's a lot of songs this band has that are great. But this is the signature song. This is it. This is the hit. I mean, it was on multiple video games. It was on Headbangers Ball on repeat. It was on every metal adjacent video show or anything like that on repeat. Not only is it known for its main riff, you've got a lot of aspects in the song that are just great. It's a 3-note song. There's not like, it's based off of just the D minor scale, basically. But you've got guitar acrobatics in the bridge, like these crazy, just wild, like layered harmonies that are going on. You've also got Neil Fallon from Clutch doing the bridge, which is just pummeling sounding. I think it's the line that always sticks out to me is break your back and crack your oarsman, which is just great. And the guys were probably like, hey, let's see if we can get Neil to come do this part. This sounds like old school Clutch. And they just made a phone call. Like, sure, guys, I'll do it. We just spent 3 months on tour together.
Yeah. It's the main riff itself works. It's very, it's funny because like, I remember reading something where Braun was like, some of maybe the more diehard fans at this point were like kind of turned off by it because it maybe was like simpler or whatever. But I like that the riff is pretty straightforward because then it allows, and we'll just get this right out of the gate. I mean, Braun is like unreal all over this fucking record. Yeah. And so because the riff is like maybe a little bit more just kind of in the pocket groove, he's able to just kind of go fucking nuts all over the song. Yeah. So
a fun thing is that like dueling guitar harmony part that's like kind of in the middle, right before the very last part, that switches between 5 and 6 like every measure.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, so it's like that, and that's a big thing too, I think, with this band, where it's like maybe something like this, it sounds kind of simple at first, but then you dig a little deeper, it's like, oh, actually that's a little bit of thinking man kind of music there. The fucking guitar harmonies, a lot of like Iron Maiden kind of thirds.
Yeah.
That, as soon as I maybe like got to dig in a little bit more with this band and like really listen, it's like, okay, I see there's like definitely that kind of Adrian Smith, Dave Murray kind of Iron Maiden guitar attack going on at some points in this record for sure.
Especially this song, but this whole album is very hummable. Yes. All the guitar parts are so fucking catchy, very memorable, and yeah, just hum along to the whole fucking album.
We made the comparison to Metallica's first 4 records. I would argue that maybe this album would be considered kind of the Master of Puppets in the lineage, whereas Blood Mountain might be more the Ride the Lightning, and that album just happened to come next after this one. I think you could rotate the two because even that album has some more experimentation on it. Maybe the songs are a little bit more refined in there. Those are a little bit more melodic in sense, but as Swindle said, everything essentially on this record, even the few vocal harmonies that are there and the melodic vocals are very memorable. They're very hummable. There's a lot of odd time signatures on here, a lot of 6, a lot of 5s. I think there's a couple, maybe in Hearts Alive, there might be some phrases of 9 even on there with just a long track like that. But Blood and Thunder, pretty straightforward track aside from some of the time signature changes. It revolves around that one riff. You get basically blueprint Mastodon right out the gate. You get the wild drums, you get these very pounding, pummeling riffs, very thick sounding production. Troy is not only the primary vocalist on this album, but he's also holding the fundamental in here by, with this great, massive, distorted sounding bass tone that just cuts through at points. It's almost, upon first listening to this album, it was really hard to discern what's guitar, what's bass. And then after repeatedly listen to it, you hear this just nasty, kind of like ratchety bass sound coming through. And it's one of my favorite bass tones I've ever heard. I have sought after the pedal that he recorded this album with for years. It's a handmade fuzz made by a company called Bluebeard or Sanford and Sonny. Sanford and Sonny Bluebeard bass fuzz. It's a modded Big Muff, and they handmade them. At the time, you could basically email the guy and go, "I want one." He'd make it, you'd pay for it, and you had it. Now, anytime you see them, they're like 6 times what they're supposed to be. But I've wanted that fuzz sound for years. But again, immediately right out the gate, you have essentially blueprint Mastodon. You know what you're going to get.
Well, and to comment on Troy, I mean, his vocals are fucking perfect for an album that are about a fucking sea captain and chasing a whale. They sounds like he has been on the open water for quite some time. The video, as you mentioned too, is perfect. Like, that's an iconic video. And I love the story behind it as well, where it's like, I think Relapse had mentioned, or Relapse had maybe pushed to do like more like traditional like videos, like some of the, I don't know if I think it's maybe later on the record, but they got like, I think Iron Tusk is like, maybe it's like in a warehouse or something like that or whatever. This one, they were just like, no, we got this. We're going to have all of our fucking friends out at this like local bar. Everybody's fucking trashed, like quite literally. Like, I think PBR sponsored the evening. There's like random fans, and they're all dressed up like, it's like clowns. But we mentioned Aqua Teen. A lot of the videos, or at least 2 of the videos on this record, for promotion of this record, Jonathan Ray and Tom Bingham, who have some connections to Cartoon Network, obviously Atlanta.
And Turner.
Yeah, of course, Turner. Jonathan Ray was part of the original creative team for Cartoon Network, the anime. So he had like a hand in Toonami, and then he also had a hand in Adult Swim. And so he has like credits with Aqua Teen. And so that was like kind of the tie-in where they were like, later on, they were able to do that opening of the movie. I thought that was pretty interesting. So it's like all Atlanta all the time.
Hey man, sometimes it's just about keeping it in the neck of the woods. I mean, God forbid this album came out 5 years earlier. It would probably been used for a WCW tie-in.
Could have only hoped. I
mean, that video mentioning the tiny bar, the band is obviously starting the anniversary tour. So they played, they did a surprise set at the same bar as a kind of opening the tour, and it was booked under kind of like a pseudonym. I think it was called Hairy Elephant. And I mean, yeah, like no one's going to catch on to that, but yeah, they played at the same bar just a handful of days ago. So just tying the whole room together, dude.
Is that the video that Austin sent us a video?
I didn't know that was what it was. I just was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I didn't even like look into it. I was like, oh, that's neat. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't. Yeah.
The caption of the video is just like a local band.
Yes, that's it.
Like, yeah.
But yeah, again, you open the track with your classic song.
Then we can go on to I Am Ahab is track number 2.
I want to say about this. So, do either of you guys have the vinyl version of this?
Oh,
you gave me one.
I think that's right. I think, and yeah, I know you. Did you like get some? I was always interested about this, and maybe I just didn't ask. But I think you gave me Remission and Blood Mountain. Maybe. Did you get like some sort of? Would they do a reissue of certain shit?
I gave you Remission.
Yeah,
because I still have my original copy of Blood Mountain. But Remission.
What's the one with the deer hooves or the deer antlers?
That's Blood Mountain, right?
I think I have a copy of that.
I hope I didn't give you my copy of Blood
Well, if you,
Mountain.
I'll give it back to you if you did.
Yeah, if it is, no big deal. But what I wanted to talk about is Leviathan. I Am Ahab. If you listen to the vinyl track listing, I Am Ahab is on side B.
Oh, okay.
On the CD version, it's on. It's the second single. It's the second song, so it goes right to Sea Beast.
Weird.
And this, I think it was timing more so than anything of just how the A and the B side would fit.
Nice. Okay, sick.
So I might have given you a copy of, if it's the one with the deer antlers, I might have given you a copy of the Hunter.
Oh, I think that might be it.
Because that's a later era one, if anything.
But I definitely have Remission as well.
Yeah, so the copy Remission.
How many copies of Remission did you get, Dylan? Because you
So-
also gave me my copy.
So I've had a couple copies of Remission throughout the years. And I think what's happened is like, I would
forgot
go,
you had it.
Yes. I would pick it up and I was like, oh, I've owned like 4 different pressings of it.
God, that's so funny.
But I also have the remastered version they did about 10 years ago. That's like the bass has been brought up in the mix really loud. I was like, oh yeah, I'm sold on this. Like, bring it to me. But as I was mentioning to Austin, I Am Ahab's on the B side of the vinyl. Like it goes straight to Sea Beast on the vinyl from Blood and Thunder. And I think it may have been just how the album was sequenced for like the A and the B side of it, so it would all fit, because Hearts Alive takes up so much of that B side of that record. And Sea Beast is a bit longer of a track. But I Am Ahab, last track written for the record. And it kind of just came together really quickly with that. It almost was just like, hey, we've got this other song that's basically done. Let's just record it. And I think I Am Ahab is one of the more straightforward tracks on the record. It's got a great groove that opens it up. I mean, the title alone ties it with the record. It's also got those great kind of arpeggiated chords that Mastodon's known for. Those creepy kind of like spooky chords that they use. Again, I can't, it's hard to argue with this album at all. It's hard to find any weird point on this record for me because it's so beloved. But it's just a great straightforward track. It's Mastodon firing on all cylinders. It's got these great, what is it? Kind of like a hammer-on pull-off kind of sequenced riff in there that is really fucking cool.
That is great. I think going from a track like Blood and Thunder into this, where like there's a lot of like variations on that kind of riff, like it great sequencing as far as that. I mean, I think the whole album is sequenced very, very well. But yeah, like that riff is insane. Again, a lot more of those like Iron Maiden kind of like guitar harmony patterns on this song, I think. Braun is like, again, just so insane as a drummer, where it's like, and I'll say like, it's more of certainly like a Bill Ward thing where there's a lot of feel. It's not overplaying, but like it just fits with the vibe of the song and how it flows. I really enjoy it. Do you think he overplays? That's fine. I mean, I think it works.
I don't think he's overplaying, but he is not. He's busy.
Yeah,
he's
not underplaying.
Yeah,
I'm not saying like
I don't think
should
it
tone it down.
I don't think it clashes. I'll say that.
Right. I think it fits the music. It's very intense music and it's very technical. His drumming is very technical. He's just a busy drummer. Like it's not like kind of maybe Dave Grohl, his drums fit Nirvana, but Dave was way more in the pocket than like but I fucking love it. I'm not shitting on the drums. I'm not like, oh, he's doing too, like, I fucking love the drums of this album.
There's there's only a handful of drummers that I really like if I put on a record, I go, that's the first fucking thing I pay attention to. And obviously Braun is like that guy. Like I'll listen to him all day long and just still my mind is warped, from the opening fill of Blood and Thunder to, going back to our March of the Fire Ants episode we did, where that whole fucking song, he's not repeating anything. Or it doesn't seem like that. His use of the odd place snare is one of the coolest things of all time to me. just the snare of how it falls on the beat or how it falls before the beat. Or it's just, the guy is a great drummer, great musician in general. I mean, in later records, he's singing, but maybe learning more about this album, you realize he's writing a lot of the riffs. He's writing, coming up with some of the structures and all this. It's fucking wild to think how all of the guys in this band fill their role so well and do the things. I mean, this band couldn't sound like this band without all four of the parts. The commanding kind of vocal prowess of Troy Sanders, the weird stylings of Brent Hinds with some of his country guitar playing, which we're going to see a lot of on this record, and some of his maybe more traditional, maybe old school classic rock kind of writing style that he's got. Very almost like an Eagles kind of vibe to some of his writing with how melodic it is. Bill having a great grasp on what a riff should sound like, what tone should come in, and then Braun just doing his fucking thing. He's a freak. He's there's really no way to describe him. Freak! Damn! But I've been reading The Last Ronin lately, so that is perfect.
Oh, dude, I actually just got that as well.
Dude, it's fucking great.
All right, don't tell me anything. I can't wait.
Oh, it's so awesome.
I've actually
they're coming out with a game for it.
Oh,
is there really?
Are they?
That's awesome.
I think.
Shit, that's awesome. Hell yeah.
I know there's in talks of a movie as well.
Oh, like maybe like an animated thing or something?
I would think so.
Yeah, that seemed like I don't know, without having read it yet.
Yeah, it's
I'm
fucking
so
cool. You're going to like it a lot.
Dope.
But I Am Ahab, great second track, sequencing the album keeps going. But if you own a vinyl copy, just remember, I Am Ahab is on the B-side of it. But we go into Sea Beast, the third track of the record. Maybe the title itself isn't referenced to something from Melville's world, but it's definitely oceanic in scope.
I would think this is like, just reading some of the lyrics, I think it is kind of without like reading some of the lyrics and also having not read the book. I do know that it is from like the point of view, like as a lot of like old literature, it's like, through what, like letters or through like someone that was like kind of like Frankenstein is like through the perspective of somebody who was like there on the ship. Right. Like Ishmael was there on what's the name of the boat called? It's in
our notes. Hold on. I gotta look.
It's something in the top, like it's on the tip of my tongue. I know it's
isn't it
Pequod.
Pequod, like it's the pizza place. Hell yeah.
Oh my god! Is that the one we ate at last time?
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, that was the one where you guys came up. We stayed in the Airbnb.
Yeah,
like the first time. Yeah. I think this is maybe the way I interpreted it was like maybe through the perspective of Ishmael, and then there's like even some references to the book. The whale has slept by many a sailor's side, where sleepless mothers would give their lives to lay them down. I think that's like maybe something towards the end of the song, but another great video as well with the puppets.
Oh,
that's pretty great.
Great video. The black and white kind of, the guys being in the shadows and all of that is great. Yep. Also, the first kind of representation of melodic vocals on the album,
which are great. They're so good.
Yeah. Brent's got a good knack for that stuff.
There's some good variations with that.
The first riff of the song is like the first time you can really come up for breath in this album, because the first two songs are just like fucking coming at you at 1,000 miles per hour, and there's like no breaks. And then the beginning of the song is just like the kind of picking reverb guitar part. So it's like just gives you a moment to like catch up.
Yeah. I like that you said Eagles before. I hadn't really considered it, but that it definitely feel like in a very eerie way. There's that kind of like Joe Walsh kind of scale run kind of riffing thing. Maybe a little similar to that in a way. I don't know if there's like a connection with that.
Oh no, the opening riff in this is just an arpeggiated like chord progression in like 6/8.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's very, very cool. I also noted as I was kind of like listening to the record too, this is like maybe where I first really heard Troy's bass kind of shining through as well. Yeah. And the way it was played is like, to me, very reminiscent to something like out of like Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb, just the way that just it kind of grooves in
Slides
there
into it.
again. Just
Yep.
just the thing that I have to tie it into something that I'm familiar with. But yeah, what is the time signature with this thing?
It's some variation of 3, 6, 9, 12, something.
1, 2,
15.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
There's and this is one of those riffs that's deceptive in a way of like, oh, it just sounds like they're just pounding chords. There's weird points where it repeats and it, it comes back to it.
And when they change, they'll like change chords at weird times. It's very fucking disorienting. And I was wondering if that was like maybe played into like the fact that it's fucking ocean themed, like rocking a boat, kind of like being on a boat would probably feel disorienting. So I was like, I wonder if that has anything to do with the theme of the album.
Damn, good point.
I mean, it may have, they put a lot of time and effort into this, even in a short amount of time. You've got kind of I don't want to use bear and snake vocals because they're not that tight, but you have this great balance of who's doing what part and that sort of thing. Whereas like Brent's doing these great melodic, almost like, hell, I would even say like Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath era kind of Ozzy style vocals right through there. And then you've got Troy coming in those big, like huge sounding parts in there. That's adding some of the simplicity back to it. But it's just great octave moving thing that he's doing. And then the fucking wild riff that ends this song, just the craziness going down these lines is like, where do you come up with this shit? How does it happen?
Chugging, da da, digga 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 da 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 da.
And then straight into that, just shooka-baka digga dooga dagga booga booga dagga digga 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 digga. And Mastodon does this one thing, and you can find an example of it on every fucking record. When they lock into like a groove, no band sounds like them locking into that groove. Because it's represented really well in this track when the band finally does lock into that final groove. It's like there's nothing that I've heard that, Cannibal Corpse does a very good representation of their groove, but Mastodon sounds like no other band I've heard. It's just a sum of all the parts. It's a sum of the influences, and they lock in really well.
Island. That's at this point, I think this is the heaviest, most abrasive part of the record thus far.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you guys feel about this. I've seen this in other interviews, so maybe we'll tie this back in. But I think this is Mastodon's interpretation of Converge. Like, this is like what I feel like how they would do that. Just the way it's played, just the way it feels. I feel like it's like kind of how they would maybe play their version of it.
Fucking dissonant.
Yeah.
The first riff is fast and dissonant as fuck.
So I think this is a Bill song.
Interesting.
I think because Bill played in Lethargy, played in Today Is the Day. The band did a ton of shows with Burnt by the Sun as well. And there are later albums where Bill has written like these kind of homages to that dissonant style of music. So this absolutely, like I could definitely see how you would come to that, descriptor, especially with it. It seems like a No Heroes kind of vibe, even though that album hasn't necessarily came out by this point yet.
No, totally. And I knew, like, obviously, it's hard to, if you're into underground music, I'm sure you're listening to this shit, but I know they were listening to this for sure because I read from the previous record that when they sent the record initially off to be like mastered, they were like, we want it to sound like fucking like similar to Converge. And the guy they sent it to like had no right way about any of that sort of music. So like the initial mastering of that like sucked and they had to do it again. But I'm like, okay, they at least know they like definitely are listening to this stuff and maybe inspired in some capacity. So that having not the same sort of attachment to this record as y'all, that was like my first kind of gut reaction with that.
I can see it.
Yeah. I mean, it's 100% there, but you're right. This is the most aggressive thing on the album so far. And and there's some wild shit going on in the song. I mean, I keep coming to mind with this like very dissonant style solo part towards the end of it that kicks into the final riff of the song. I mean, this is just a fucking blast of a song. I think this has the vocal line that Troy says, "Beware the hammer of Thor."
Yeah.
Somewhere.
The lyrics are great. I was like looking up stuff. That's what I love. And we kind of touched on this, with the thou shit, where you're like, you see references to things and you like end up kind of like maybe going down a rabbit hole of your own, just like to see where are they pulling from? This is like basically just kind of a Icelandic, fully just referencing Icelandic like folklore and like even Icelandic parliament, like all thing I think is what it's called, but it's the oldest extant parliament in the world, founded in 930 AD. They reference the volcano in that area that occurred in 1973. So there's just like a lot of different things from like Old Norse mythology to like actual events happening. So it's very, very cool. I had wondered because I know not all of the songs tie into Moby Dick necessarily. This one, I was like, I even looked up a map. I'm like, where did Ahab go? Like, did he end up in like Iceland? Is that like why they reference it on the thing? But I wasn't too sure. But very cool song lyrically, and just the way it's like that noodly kind of mathy thing is awesome.
That I also specifically took note of that really fucking noodly part that I don't know if you really consider it a verse, but like it comes at the end of the part that's like repeated 3 times, and it like lasts forever, and it is repeated so fucking frequently that you also kind of get lost at where you're like listening to it, at where you're at. I love that. Fucking love that.
The riff that sticks out to me is the do da 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 da. That just great track. It's a quick track. I think I've seen him play this live once, and it went over just like you would imagine, like just bodies everywhere. Now, I'll say this. The next track may open up with the best fucking drum part of the whole album, which is Iron Tusk. This band uses 3 tunings. They use like a standard tune full step down, so like a D standard tuning, a drop C, and then they tune their low E down to an A, which adds like an octave effect. And this is a representation of that tuning. And Iron Tusk, just that fucking drum fill that kicks it off. And what a massive track. Straightforward, very reminiscent of March of the Fire Ants. Matter of fact, when they play it live, they'll sequence out of the end of March of the Fire Ants into Iron Tusk or vice versa, because it all kind of has the same feel and vibe to it. But man, this is the middle part of this song just hits me in the head so hard with those dueling leads that makes it feel like you're on the ocean. The type of harmony they're using is very, kind of swaying in a feel.
I don't know if it is. Are like sea shanties? Are they kind of in like waltzy or 6/8? I don't know
like,
if
I feel like there is like a kind of one of those.
I don't know if they did it on purpose when they wrote the album, but I feel like a lot of this album is a lot of like the main parts of the songs are in like 3 or 6 or 12. And I feel like that lends itself to like sound, like I was saying earlier, it sounds like wavy or like fluid.
I like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it were. That sounds like wouldn't it be great though if he was like, they didn't plan any of that. They were like, no, that's exactly what we were planning for. Like just creating this lore. But just how excited Braun was like getting off that plane. I feel like they probably were just like going wild with ideas. And it's a pretty full-fledged concept in its own right. So I wouldn't be surprised if it were, that intricate and stuff, That's pretty cool. I like that idea.
The main riff of this song is a fucking iconic riff. And after Blood and Thunder, this is probably the most hummable song on the album. This is probably the second I could just recall every guitar. I could probably sit here and hum the whole song to y'all right now if I had to.
I like the drum parts are great. I did notice, and I maybe didn't notice on other tracks, but I felt like Braun is using some of that double bass like kind of intermittently like throughout the song as well in certain parts, which was really cool.
Yeah.
It's the riff that always gets me is it's more towards the end of the track. It's the shukka da ducka da ducka da da da
Oh, yeah.
I think that was probably one of my favorites on the album, honestly.
Just the dissonant chords play and how the dissonant chords play out the song. But that whole harmony in the middle, like between that, this is a fairly simple track. It's like 3 parts really, but it's just it's the intensity and the aggression they're playing these parts with. I mean, these are songs that can't be played lightly. Like these guys are going out and putting their all behind these tracks. And again, this was probably the most traditional video film for the album. Again, it even looks like it was filmed in the same space that March of the Fire Ants was filmed in. Has the very similar vibe. Almost seems like an A and a B.
Yeah, it seemed like it was just like filmed. This wasn't recorded by the Adult Swim guys. It was like a friend of theirs that they had a space in Atlanta, like an Atlanta warehouse basically to film it in. So,
I mean, and I didn't realize this guy had done work with a lot of relapse bands.
Yeah, he did do March of the Fire Ants, Crawl Back Crawl Back In, Neurosis, Sacrifice into Sebek.
That's
Nile,
it.
Leaves of 3, Soylent Green. So
there you go. Megalodon. Big ass shark.
Yeah, I think this is a really good like halfway point for the record. I think it's great. Just the way it like, I don't know. I noted like this, if listening to it in this iteration, it's like, oh, this is really great sequencing. And then the way it, kind of opens up with those like cleans and acoustics. And then you also get like kind of those like very punchy and direct riffs, which very reminiscent of like, just like a shark kind of driving. And it feels like there's something coming for you, like in the water. I even noted like with some of the riffs on here, very kind of classic metal oriented.
Yep.
Literally, I could just rip one off the top of my head. Fast as a Shark by Accept. I mean, that could be something in its own right with some of the double bass and just like the way that riff is played. But just feels like something is quite literally coming for you in the water.
So what's your favorite part of the song?
Is it maybe the banjo part?
I was going to say the country lick.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was the first thing that I remember when I listened to this album the first time ever. I like when that lick hit, I was like, I will never stop listening to this album. I distinctly remember where I was.
Okay.
Where were you?
I was on a school bus. I was like,
Yeah.
Perfect.
We were going somewhere for like a band trip, school band, high school band, and I listened to this album for the first time. And when that lick hit, I was like, "Oh, holy fuck, this is weird." I didn't know until this point that this album was weird.
There are really fun parts of this album where, like, up until this point, like, yes, it is kind of like off kiltered and like weird, but it's like kind of straightforward for a lot of it. And then there are so many parts I feel like maybe on this back half where they're just like, they just go off on a tangent because they can. And it's like, this definitely is that where like, fuck it, we'll just do it. That's it. Like, we just did that.
Wait, Brent's been playing this lick like in sound check for 2 years. Fuck it, put it on the record.
Oh, is that what it was?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like a
Yeah,
sound check riff to me, like some sort of blues lick he came up with. And Brent's really proficient in hybrid picking. So like if you watch him live, he's playing a lot of the higher strings with his 3 additional fingers on his hand. And it's like he does a lot of that in a lot of these tracks. But this one in particular, not only is that riff cool, but it leads right into a fucking circle pit part. And the only successful circle pit I've ever seen at a show was when I saw this band in 2014. That part kicked in right after the blues lick and the whole room opened up at Marathon. I was like, this is terrifying.
Who ran into that
People were
hole?
climbing the columns, like the poles there to get out of the way.
Jesus.
I fucking love, I think the first riff of the song, like kind of picking the way that it like they just like descend pick into that like kind of power chord riff, the second riff that happens, that's like masterful. And then yeah, down into the power chord. And then I was like listening to it for this episode, and I was like, I never realized how wild that transition is. And then the fucking transition into that Metallica riff or whatever. But then I've listened to this album 10 million goddamn times, and I know how the song goes, but they're like going out of that fucking fast Metallica riff, those like 3 chords that they play, they just come out of fucking nowhere. They're like da 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 da. I was like, where
Fuck, that part, that hyper picked part that comes after it is like, holy shit, this is like death metal shit. This is like double picking like the entire time.
Yeah.
Again, the band has kind of said they don't really understand why they got put on bills with death metal bands, but sometimes it's like, it's there. Like maybe not to the extent that a lot of people at those shows would want, but like it's there. You could hold together with bands like that.
There aren't any bands that sound exactly like Mastodon, but they were fucking weird. Like if what mainstream band were they going to go out on tour with on this album that they would have like fit in with? Like they had to be out on tour with some fucking weirdos because they were fucking weirdos writing fucking weirdo music. Like now they probably could tour with
whoever.
I don't
right.
Like
yep.
Their music is way less weird now than it was then. Now they would fit in with normal bands, I'm sure. But then, no, they made weirdo music. I say that lovingly because I'm a fucking weirdo too.
This is true. You're maybe you're one of the weirdest people I know. Speaking of weird shit, I fucking love the lyrical like references on this too, where they're like talking about like the Kraken and of course the fucking Fiji mermaid. This
I got
song,
one of those.
Do you really?
Yeah, Lauren got me one. I got one of them.
You just got one. I love that. It reminds me of when you guys visited and we went to Woolly Mammoth here in Chicago and all the weird taxidermy shit on the wall. Like there's definitely parts of this record where you could like read it and get that vibe, or like again like that old sea thing, or you watch the movie Freaks or something like that, and it's just it's all the kind of there.
The Lighthouse came to mind a lot while listening to this record the last couple of days. A lot with some of the sea-driven kind of madness and everything.
I still gotta watch it again because the last time I watched it with you, I was hammered and I couldn't focus on the movie. I was like, "Whoa, what is happening?
What is happening?" I wanted to note the opening part of this track again, which is that great. It's a vibe. Again, it feels like you're kind of on the sea, right? The fucking drums underneath that intro are astounding. He, again, off-place snare that I love so much. And he's not just doing that, but he's doing shit that I can't fathom in my head. You know, there's kind of the trope now where, and we've all seen like, TikToks and IG clips of like the clip of like when your guitar player writes the drum part and it's just this hyper technical thing that no one can do. Braun was doing that shit and still is doing that shit. I mean, there's songs later on in their career that had fucking disco beats being played in it. And it's like, oh, okay, these guys are still fucking weird. There's still a bunch of like just weird dudes that got together that like weird fucking music, like Swindle said.
Making music for weirdos. Weirdos making music for weirdos.
Naked Burn.
Boo, 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 boo. Great.
Probably the most melodic track on the album.
Love that shit. Vocals are great. There's some damn fine cymbal play in the beginning of the song. Filthy ass bass tone, as you mentioned before.
This is the song that in particular that he sticks out the most on, and that's because the guitars are playing a higher register, right? So it cuts a little bit more. But it's despicable. It's even feeding back at points, which fits so well in this. There's live footage for them doing this track in the kind of the Workhorse Chronicles that Brent doesn't have the lyrics quite set to where they need to go. So like the lyric placement is off, and it's fucking wild to hear it so long and hear that version where it's kind of off.
I love that. The lyrics, again, just for being weirdos, like where are you guys like fucking pulling from? Because there's like some weird like biblical, it's like these weird like angel human hybrid beings that are like referenced in the Bible and shit. And it's also, from what I understand, it's a drowning song too, which is like not fun. It's bleak as hell. You're reading along to those lyrics.
This is definitely the most melodic track on the album. You can remember the vocal melody. The opening guitar line, once it's harmonized, is kind of like dizzying to an effect. So that kind of goes with the drowning. You don't know where you're at in the water. Are you upside down? Are you swimming deeper? This is like a classic rock song. And the way it ends, the bass just kind of cutting through, almost like it's always made me think of the beginning of Disposable Heroes. When it gets to the break and you just hear the bass kind of cut through in these weird points, makes me think of that like immediately. But again, you really get to see Brent shine on this track a lot. And they're definitely taking some chances with how the vocals are on this album, which is the progression we would continue to see with this band is their vocals. They started to come into their own with vocals. And that's what's so cool about this band is like they start out and the shit's almost unintelligible. And then you look at where they're at now, and 75% of the band is singing.
One of the Grammy nominated or winning albums where Braun was doing vocals on, I think it was the one that got nominated. What's the album? It's Third Rock from the Sun. What's that record?
Oh, Once More Around the Sun.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think that's
probably
where,
the Motherlode.
Yeah. I was like, oh shit, this guy like has some fucking pipes. Like actually, he's got very pipes. Good singing voice, 100%.
It's funny to think it took him till the fourth record to really get him to like come out and do vocals. Cause like there's points all over the next record, Blood Mountain, that you would hear him singing. But on that record, you get almost like Troy's transition into doing more of like these great clean vocals. And he kind of sounds like a weird, mixture of like a Phil Lynott and like a James Hetfield in the later eras. He's got this very robust kind of voice.
Whereas like this, I feel like some of the earlier stuff, he sounds like fucking Matt Pike. Like,
dude, he's like, God, what's the bass player from Neurosis name? Dave Edwardson.
Sure.
Like sounds just like him.
Yeah.
Like these bellow kind of vocal.
Speaking of Neurosis,
what a fucking track.
We got Aqua Dementia.
Oh.
The opening of the song rips. That fucking riff is insane.
Yeah. Definitely some Southern rock influence maybe on this song, perhaps.
So
I mean with the Neurosis connection, obviously Dylan had mentioned that when Braun and Bill were in Today Is the Day, they had opened for Neurosis on tour. I think even there was like a week where that band wasn't even playing with Neurosis. They just stayed. They were asked to stay on the tour to like just be roadies or something like that. And they kept in contact with Scott, who I believe this is the first record he did were guest vocals. And then, pretty much through,
Emperor of Sand,
right.
The 2017 record. That's the last one he's on.
Yeah. So for obvious reasons, probably.
Yeah. But to kind of bring that together with that terrible thing aside, the band wouldn't have its name without Scott Kelly. I think the story is like they came up with the name Mastodon. However it was decided that would be the name. I think Braun called Scott and was like, "Hey, what do you think about the band name Mastodon?" Scott turns to his son and goes, "Is Mastodon a cool name?" Kid goes like, "Yes, it fucking is. Yeah, it sounds good."
I wonder what about Scott Kelly made them call him, like, were they like, Let's come up with 10 band names and call Scott Kelly and ask him what he thought the coolest one was.
Just from what I understand, like in the thing, they like, I mean, I'm obviously they love Neurosis. And I think Braun had like mentioned they had really just stayed in touch ever since they had gone on tour. So like kind of looking up to at least one
Kinda
of the
like
guys
the
in that
uncle.
band. Yeah.
or something like that.
So yeah, they called him out. He was there. I loved, I don't know if I mentioned earlier when they got, what's the guy's name from Clutch again?
Neil Fallon.
What he just basically he showed up and left the same day. Like he just like it was like flew in, did his part, made it back to DC like in the same day.
24 hours, right?
Christ, that's that's almost like transcontinental flight.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so you have Scott's vocals on here. You also have Phil Peterson with some cello performances on this. One thing I thought was very interesting about this song that I love, got some like fucking dissonant like black metal chords on this fucking song, which is so fucking cool. And like, just again, definitely doubling down into that weirdo thing where it's just like, hey, if it fucking fits, we'll do it. We don't give a shit.
I mean, that kind of minor chord sound has been used throughout the band's career too. Like it's brought back in different forms, and it works really well in this A tuning that they use on this song. And the low end is so dense on this song. But the big break where there's more space added to the song, when Scott's vocals kick in, it's fucking terrifying. That feels to me like this is the final battle between the Whale and Ahab. Like, this is what it feels like to me. And it's basically like, from the perspective of the beast, it's, all right, I'm taking you down. Like, this is just what's going on. You're not going to win this. You're going down. And you get those just dissonant sounding black metal style chords. But then the end of the track, you've got the ocean starting to boil.
Yeah, I would say that to me personally, the climax of the song would be the next track, which is just like all sorts of twists and turns. I mean, this is quite the undertaking. Like this to do, essentially a 14-minute long song on Hearts Alive, it's pretty crazy. But I will say the one connection that I wanted to bring up as well, not that it sounds anything like it, but because Iron Maiden has come up quite a bit, I couldn't not think of Rime of the Ancient Mariner, just like the 15-minute long track that they did, and that whole literature-based thing. Very, very cool. But I will say, I think this song sounds certainly more in line with something like, or at least certain parts, like Call of the Cthulhu.
Absolutely.
Metallica.
Yes.
Like 100%.
100%. Those opening chords for sure are reminiscent of that. And what I forgot was that Brent had this written before they even hit the studio. He was done with it. And he's like, I had it done before I gave it to the band. Like, just here's a 13.5-minute song. Now let's use it. And every twist and turn, the clean intro that feeds into the, this, I guess it's an ascending kind of power chord, just dissonant line that keeps moving and moving, is one of the coolest fucking things ever. They harmonize the chords. The vocals, the lyrics on this track are fucking cool. You get to hear kind of the beginnings of Troy doing a cleaner vocal styling on this track. And the band plays it live pretty regularly, like the entire thing. And just that mess of like time signature changes and the dynamics in the track and the huge section of harmony kind of lead guitars there is otherworldly.
Get some solos on. You got a solo on here. I mean, this is kind of where I mentioned earlier with like some of those kind of like wacky ass like tangents and stuff like that. You get it all over here. We're just like, whoa, we're fucking like all over the place. It's like just such a, like I said, it's a climax. It just like is such a like fucking roller coaster ride of a song.
For it being a 13-minute track, it like, even as a kid, it kept my attention the entire time. It wasn't one of those things where I would go, okay, this part's cool. Let's get to that part. This had my attention the entire time. It didn't feel like it didn't feel like a track that was just trying to be shoehorned in on the record. It felt like it fit with the chord phrasings, the different kind of riff structures that they have, like all the harmonies, these crazy, almost swelling kind of parts. Like it's fucking wild. I mean, there's no other way to discuss a track like this of this length.
I kind of wondered what made them want to keep it. It seems like there's a point in the song, like 7 minutes in, almost directly halfway in, where it like switches rhythms. It kind of like fades out and comes back in a different rhythm. And I wondered what made them want to keep it as one long song instead of splitting it like right there and making 2 songs out of it. Not that it makes it like bad or good or better or worse or whatever. I just was like, that seemed like a clean break, a place where they could have broken this into 2 songs, but they decided not to. And I wonder what made them want to do that. Again, not that I'm talking shit or like,
you know, this is track 9, and that could have very well just been like, we only want 10 songs.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. You know, 5 on A, 5 on B kind of thing. It's debatable too that the final track is, you know, it fits the vibe of the record for sure. But this is to me the final track on the record. This is how the album ends. But no, you're right. It's where the cymbals kick in, right? Where he's working the hi-hat and then they kick into that next part, which is kind of the busier part of the song, which is where all the wild solos and stuff begin. But no, I'd never even like thought about that until you had just mentioned. It's like, yeah, that does sound like 2 separate parts, 2 separate songs almost. But maybe it was easier to do it this way than going, all right, here's Hearts Alive Part 1, Hearts Alive Part 2. Or what do they call it? Like epilogue and prologue or something like that. And maybe that was it. Maybe that's a question we can get answered. Who knows?
But yeah, we go into the final track of the album. I definitely think you probably could have ended this record with Hearts Alive, but
yeah,
I do think Joseph Merrick, the instrumental, it plays out like an end credits kind of thing in a movie.
Yeah,
obviously. Joseph Merrick, maybe otherwise known as the Elephant Man, which they also had an instrumental on Remission, dedicated to the same person. It just feels like it's just an end credits kind of like blues jam. It's cool. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be there, but it's fun. I like it. I don't hate it. There's nothing I have against it. But yeah, I think once I like get to the end of Hearts Alive, where I'm like, man, I just went through like I'm kind of like, I don't know if I even listened to I listened to the whole thing. But you know, future listens like, okay, I kind of know where this goes.
Yeah,
fine.
It always reminds me of Black Hole Sun. I think it's because of the whatever effect is on the guitar, like the phaser or whatever. I don't know what effect it is, but I think I'm like, oh yeah, Black Hole Sun.
The band did these like 3, it's debatable if the third one is actually tied in with the Joseph Merrick kind of narrative. But obviously Elephant Man on Remission is very much a tribute track. This is a tribute track. And I believe I've read 2 kind of separate things that Pendulous Skin on Blood Mountain is dedicated to him as well. What I've noticed about a lot of their records is the final track, be it this one or Hearts Alive, a lot of those are Brent Hines written tracks. So there's kind of this big grandiose kind of vibe to them and all of that. Like if you look at take Crack the Sky, which is the last Baron, that's a big Brent Hines song. But he's got a lot of these hyper melodic tracks that gets in. And I've also noticed that sometimes the band's just like, yeah, there was this cool acoustic track that Brent had and it just kind of fit the vibe of the record. You know, let's just tie it on. But no, I could definitely see this album just ending blank with Hearts Alive, 1 track or split into 2, however you wanted to do it. And this feels like, it doesn't feel like a B-side because it does fit the vibe of the album, but it feels like if it wasn't on there, it would work too. But I kind of look forward to this track because, again, it plays out like you said, plays out like the ending credits.
Feels like I'm getting my stuff together. I'm like the lights came on in the theater. I'm like looking for my keys and brushing the popcorn off myself, and like I'm making my way to the exit. But it's good. It's like good vibe kind of music. Like
The chord progression is interesting. At least it's not just like a
100%.
C, D, G or something like that, you know? It's a fun chord progression that they're playing.
Because it's the whole band, because he starts it out and then the whole band kind of kicks in. And again, it adds more. There's a swing to it for sure. And it just adds more to that kind of seafaring kind of vibe. You know, watching a lot of like movies on pirates and seeing things with like watching old like A&E documentaries or History Channel stuff on this, like, and after hearing this record, it's like, oh, okay, this fits so much more. And that's probably why I'm into some of the mythology stuff that I'm into and watch that so much. It's like, oh, you know, I had records like this growing up, so I had to dive in. But I want to go back to something that I brought up on the Ashes of the Wake episode, which was I always thought that was the more accessible of these two records. And after hearing this, and Swindle brought up, he's like, no, these motherfuckers are playing with weird time signatures. People have a hard time with that. It's like, hey, he's right, 100%. Like most of that record's in 4/4, and this thing veers off into alien territory multiple times. So it's hard for people to grasp onto it. But I think it was more so the melodic embellishments on this record that made me go, oh, okay, someone's going to latch onto a Naked Burn over a Now You've Got Something to Die For. But again, fantastic record, a classic record by our standards, 46 minutes in length. You know, it kind of hits right in that time frame that the album doesn't feel too long. It doesn't feel like a quick record either. It feels like a story, but you're never bored throughout the story. Like it doesn't let up. Everything makes sense. It's good for repeated listens. Like obviously I'm biased for this band, but I could put this album on and listen to it twice in a row and not feel bad about doing that and not feel like, I've already listened to it. It's like, oh no, put it on again. Let's just let it cycle through again.
Yeah, and it just based on some of the research that I did, it seemed like even Relapse knew it was going to be a fucking big deal because they were like, before it even came out, they were like, hey, we're pretty sure this is going to be a big deal for you guys. So, you know, it's like, you know, they're relatively at this time, I'm sure they're not like, you know, they're obviously still a big label to me and to a lot of bands, but they have a lot of bands on their roster so that, you know, you probably can't give all of your time to something like this. And so I'm pretty sure it wasn't long before Warner started kind of sniffing around and some bigger labels came out and we were like, oh, that's interesting. Why is Warner's like looking around, kind of trying to, what's going on with that?
It's what I kind of put together was that Relapse was actually managing themselves.
Yeah. And
they were getting a lot of tours. And of course the label was being very kind to him and going, hey guys, this thing's going to be a whopper. This thing's going to be really big. You guys are on Ozfest. The last big band we had on Ozfest was Neurosis in 96. This is big deal shit. You guys need to look into management, like a legitimate management team, and probably continue to move forward that way. And I think they signed on with the same management team they're still with to this day. And then of course when you get into management and you're able to get larger tours and more exposure, then you get the big boys kind of moving in. And this was a time frame where major labels were still really big and they were, you know, it was still functioning like the old school music business, right? The band signed to Warner Brothers, and I'm sure they had the same fears, and I believe they've discussed it of like, shit, they're going to come in here and tell us we have the right whatever. And the label is like, you guys do what you do. And they're still fucking on Warner Brothers. They're still on Warner Brothers 20 years later.
The frog got him.
Yeah.
He came in with that top hat and cane, and they fucking signed the dotted line right there.
Yes, sir, Mr. Frog.
Those guys saw that frog and they were just like, it's shit. Sony's not doing this. Let's go. You guys, is it him? Is that Mr. Frog? Like, bring him in.
Yeah, I mean, this thing fucking peaked at 139 on the US Billboard 200. I mean, it made some chart appearances for sure. But I mean, yeah, if your label is like already sees the fucking writing on the wall, just like, all right, I think we've done as much as we can. Maybe it's time to move on. That's pretty cool. I mean, kudos to them. And, of course, we've mentioned that some of these songs even appeared in video games. I mean, Iron Tusk was in Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. You had like an NHL game, Blood and Thunder, Need for Speed, Saints Row, Rock Band, Guitar Hero, Metallica.
I forgot about the fucking movies.
Yeah, I mean, fucking The Big Short, which, obviously is later, but, yeah, your songs have become just like pop culture at this point where it's like, all right, it's in an Oscar-winning movie. You have Island was even in like Monsters University as well. So it's just all a part of the pop culture.
Yep. I can remember the scene in Monsters University that it's in. Like, I remember watching it for the first time, and there's a point where one of the mothers is dropping the kids off to go break into something, and she just says, I'm going to sit here and listen to music. And she closes the door, and I'm like, motherfucker, is that really what I think it is? Like, I had to go back twice, like, son of a bitch. Okay. All right, Warner Brothers did something. So that must mean Mastodon's like Disney canon at this point.
Yeah.
Like Baby Yoda, Mastodon, Ewoks.
Same thing.
It all ties in.
I'm still mad at that movie. I can't get past the fact that I screwed up the lore in that movie.
Shut up.
It's true.
Anyway, let's
Hold
move right
on.
along.
I need to know what this lore.
I'll edit this out. But it was like in the original movie, they say that Mike and Sully have been friends since like the third grade. And in the whole movie, they just
met in
retconned.
college.
It's
They
bullshit.
They retconned it.
It's fucking retcon.
And they weren't even
bullshit.
friends.
They weren't even friends.
Austin hates a retcon.
I hate it.
I get it.
Fuck with it's such a glossed over detail, but like for a company that's so fixated on being, true to the thing, they just like, no.
Even if it objectively makes it better, like how like Halloween, when they started the new series, they were like, let's get rid of all the bullshit movies where we made Michael Myers a fucking cult god that
I hate all of that shit.
Fucked his niece or whatever and had a kid. You're like, no, that's part of the canon. You can't erase that.
I do hate that. Those movies don't exist. What's that fucking dude? What's Ant-Man's name? He's in that shit too.
Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd's in it.
He is.
One of them. Yeah.
He's in the fifth one?
Yeah, he's a dream warrior or something. No,
God. You're getting your eyepiece mixed up there, bud.
Was that the joke?
Are we going to talk about the fucking tours?
All right.
Yep.
Can we move this fucking shit along?
Yeah, so we talked about they toured with Clutch for the early part of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Then we move ahead to July, the summer, Fear Factory, Mastodon, Sworn Enemy, Walls of Jericho. Then through
break the walls down.
I think this Walls of Jericho is a little less problematic.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Where were you January 6th? We'll cut that one out too. I don't want that Canadian fella coming after me.
Fuck him.
Yeah.
I'll call my buddy Sebastian Bach.
That guy from the fucking Gilmore Girls?
Holy shit. So
Yeah.
Lauren and I are
Swindle's
like
pissed.
binging through Trailer Park Boys. She's never watched it. And it gets to, I think it's the 7th season. And I went, just you fucking wait. She's like, what are you talking about? I go, just wait. She kept going, who is Sebastian Bach? And why do you keep talking about him? I'm like, fucking wait. He steps out of that car and she goes, oh my God, Gilmore Girls. And I went, correct.
Yep.
I said, there you go. I fucking love trains.
October, the Unholy Alliance Tour, Slipknot, Slayer, Hatebreed, and Mastodon. Pretty fucking crazy lineup there.
And they became close friends with Slayer over the next few years.
No
for sure.
fucking kidding. Because not only did they do that fucking tour, which I believe may have been in Europe, but then they also did the Jägermeister music tour, which I'm fairly certain we mentioned in our Killswitch Engage episode. Because, Slayer, Killswitch, Mastodon, basically just hitting the road. And I'm sure the Jaeger fucking dispenser was flowing strong in the Slayer tent.
Every
And
one
the
of those
Mastodon
guys,
tent.
Yeah, honestly.
every single night was rolling on the ground. Take me to Astro's grave. Take me. You
Dude,
think
I
there's cheese in that Danish?
couldn't fucking imagine.
I stole your glasses, Carrie. I stole your glasses.
They're the ones that come over the dome.
Yes.
too. Yeah.
Can't snowboard anymore, can you? Where are your
But-
snakes at?
I mean, yeah, this
We're
band
gonna get
was
sued.
on.
We're gonna be hearing from Kerry King's lawyers.
What?
Fucking libel.
Fucking call them. I'm on it.
But yeah, I mean, this not like the band obviously toured hard this year, but I mean, continued to tour hard for the next, few years, I would say. I mean, they were on Ozfest 05 playing the second stage. I mean, and there's, like you said, bigger tours. They're probably touring in a bus for the first fucking time as well, and we, obviously watched the Workhorse Chronicles documentary, which kind of covers a lot of the touring this band had done up until this point from like 2005. And yeah, if you just can imagine that piece as like what being on tour in Mastodon is like, you can only, imagine what the rest of the next few years would be like with these guys.
You get all this great touring in 04, 05, and they didn't let up. The band signs to Warner Brothers Records. Still signed to this day, 20 years later. They basically toured right up to the point that they were writing Blood Mountain, which was their major label debut. And off of the band kept growing, basically. People were really into this band and kept supporting it. I mean, Leviathan debuts at like, essentially it's at number 140. Like it cracks the top 150. Blood Mountain debuted at like 32. Maybe 32 or 44, somewhere around there. And then you get the Crack the Sky and it's number 11. So the band was just progressively growing further and further, and it took a lot of fucking touring to do that. I distinctly remember looking at a bunch of shows and stuff around this period of time, and I found a show flyer for a show at the White Building in Rocketown, or maybe another building in or one of the older Rocket Towns, whichever. And it was Converge, Mastodon, and I can't remember who else was on that show. Maybe the Red Chord even. Like it was a stacked fucking bill, and this would have been the Blood Mountain era of the band. So they were still hard fucking touring.
This record just feels like a testament to that, where it's like, all right, this is where things really kind of start to pop the fuck off. And, clearly it's an important milestone for a lot of people where, as of recording, the Ashes of Leviathan tour literally starts tomorrow and runs through August. And I know I knew Matt Graham had guessed it. He was doing his fucking detective work for a while, where they're performing it in its entirety at Riot Fest in Chicago too. So yeah, I mean, it's a big fucking deal record. I'm glad that we got to talk about it since I missed it kind of, growing up, got to enjoy it later on. But I think out of all of the 04 records that we've talked about thus far, I think this one and the Shadows Fall record are probably my favorites. Just gonna draw that line in the sand. I think those two are probably my standout favorites so far.
Out of what we've talked about so far, this is definitely, even though I love the other records we've talked about, this is by far number one.
Is this the last?
It's one more.
Okay.
There's one more.
I know my next record is an 04 record, but that was complete accident.
But yeah, I would say it's definitely this one. And I think the more I listened to Ashes of the Wake, that one started to move up on the list. I would say the Killswitch record, I still love it. A little bit dated to the time. I think production wise, song wise, a little bit dated. The Shadows Fall is a little bit more classic sounding in vibe. But again, you could ask me on any given day and I would rotate those next three. But this one trumps all of those to me.
This one feels the most timeless.
Yeah.
This,
100%.
Yeah.
And it's, you ask me even any given day and I could probably rotate the first four Mastodon records and tell you which one's my favorite. But it's it's hard not to put this one in your top 3 when it comes to that band's catalog for me. And it's debatable what the other 2 would be on any given day. Classic record, classic fucking songs, set the band off into the stratosphere, basically. There's points on this tour cycle that they were opening for Metallica in like arenas in Europe and shit, playing to 6,000-7,000 people. The guys were living in a fart box econo line, and now they're just in a fart tube.
All right, we've reached that point of the episode where we like to recommend some things we've been listening to. I've only got one this week. I Am Dog Now. Chat Pile, the new single. It is out now. It's going to be coming off a new record titled Cool World, October 11th of this year through the Flenser. This is the follow-up to their debut record, God's Country, which I fucking loved. Bleak, very just bleak album. Lots of, it's, obviously I think this band kind of gets pushed into the noise rock world. They're from Oklahoma, but it's, I don't know. There's just so much going on with this band that I really, really love. And, when you listen to that record, you definitely have to come out on the other side and kind of maybe take a shower and just try to walk it off. But I love this single. It's definitely kind of rooted in a lot of what I loved about that first record. So if that's any indication, I'm definitely down for more. Like I mentioned, it's coming out on October 11th. Ben Greenberg from Uniform also has some hand in the production of this record. I think he did some of the mixing. There's a really great music video that's out for it now. It kind of looks like it's like found footage, like VHS of like a preacher and like some Southern Baptist church kind of thing. They also announced a tour with their label mates in Agriculture and Mama Leak. Some of the dates are going to feature some bands like Porcelain, Train Dodge, and of course Nashville's own Third Face. So keep an eye out for that. I'm sure there's going to be some dates by y'all, but that's what I've been listening to. What have you guys been checking out?
My first rec is the band Squid Pisser released a video for the song Gak Action Gods. The album Dreams of Puke came out in June. This video just came out like yesterday at the time of recording or something. Just fucking wild, absolutely insane grindcore. Kind of in the same, near the same vein as The Locust. Just absolutely noise, insane, fast shit. My other rec is an older album from like 2008 or 2009. The album Hungry for Nothing by the band Fight Amp. It's dissonant, nasty hardcore. I think I listened to that album for the first time ever this week, but I've listened to it multiple times this week.
Nice. Zero ties to anything we're doing next week as well. Any of your recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely none.
None of them.
None whatsoever. It's not a 2004 record. So my one rec for this week is from the band Gaira or Jaira. They are like a kind of modern sounding black metal band that put out one of my favorite releases of 2022, Mirage. This will be the follow-up to that record. The album is called Coma. It'll be coming out on October 25th of this year through Season of Mist Records. And I'm suggesting the track World Ablaze. It's rad. The band has done touring with Behemoth in the past. Think of it as sounding more like the modern version of Behemoth at that point, a little bit more melodic, maybe some more musical influences. Nate has talked about this band a lot on the Big Riff Energy podcast. It's a great band, great fucking band.
Sick. Check it all out. You can follow us for any updates on the show at Riff Worship Pod, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We also have official playlists in the link below. Riffs on Repeat, Hits from the Crypt. Dylan also does some reviews every Friday, so you can check those out. More contemporary releases. Check out some new things that are coming out, things that we've been listening to. You can email us at riffworshippod@gmail.com if you want to say hey, ask us any questions, tell us we're fucking up. It's all there. You can check it out. But for myself, for Dylan, for Swindle, we'll be back next week with another episode, baby. Riff Worship 2024. Bye.